All right, see, I forgot to switch the screens. We forgot Pete. Got to get Pete.
That's fine. I'm still tidying.
So let's
turning it
go
into
ahead.
a viewer competition. Where's Pete? There's Pete.
There's real Pete this week.
Please sit here, okay?
No virtual reality. Virtual reality. Pete.
Not this week. Test done. But I would highly recommend trying it because it was definitely a fun and interesting experience. It was really good.
Cool. I'm going to move Richard around here a little bit. So Richard's not high. We got Richard this week, so we are super pumped about that. The Four Musketeers this week. All right.
Good to have you back.
Yes.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
It's been world traveling. Got over the U.S. jet lag. You didn't get sick, did you? Because I saw a lot of LinkedIn posts last week of people who got sick from ConnectWise.
Loads
IT
of
Nation.
people got sick. Yeah, COVID was running rampant, but I'd only had COVID in September, so I think the immunity was still there. But yeah, that jet lag was a killer. And then, of course, we had a Hurricane Nicole hit. So yeah, so I thought I was going to have a great time in Miami, Orlando, Acronis Summit and ConnectWise IT Nation. Spend some time on the beach, wander around. No, it was like barricading yourself in the hotel. And yeah, there we go. But it was a great trip.
Awesome. What was your big takeaway from IT Nation this year? Well, actually, you said Acronis was pretty good, so let's do that since that one was first. What was your big takeaway from Acronis?
So I think the big one, so like word is getting out now about Acronis Summit, was a phenomenal event. So I think there was about 1,700 people there at Acronis Summit. So it's growing year on year. But the organizers did a fantastic job with the speakers. They put together the cyber studio. So I was saying to you, Andrew, just before we came on air, so there was podcasters like myself, Carl Palachuk, Eric Simpson, Chris Tim, luminaries, as Acronis kindly referred to us as. And we had a studio in the middle of the Acronis Summit or at the reception, and people could just come past, take selfies while we were doing live shows. It was a lot of fun, and they videoed them as well. But yeah, my biggest takeaway from Acronis Summit was just the diverse audience there. So I've spoken to a lot of people and they were like, wow, I don't see a lot of Acronis in the MSP space. And I was like, you don't see a lot of Acronis in the MSP space that you move in, but they have got a huge partner base. And I was saying, I would guesstimate that 40% of the audience there at a US conference were either from Latin America or from Europe. So, the big takeaway from me, Andrew, was Acronis have got a really strong product, really good focus on the managed service market, but the circles they're moving in up until now are maybe different to the ones that the rest of us are used to.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I know we used it a lot for imaging backups back in my day. Cool. What was your big takeaway from ConnectWise?
Well, first of all, don't go to Florida when there's a hurricane. That was a huge takeaway there. Secondly, man, you Americans, you don't like to walk anywhere, do you? So, like, had to Uber like what would be a 5-minute walk away. Second takeaway. But the third one is like, ConnectWise, the community there, it is just mind-blowingly vast. So we talked about Acronis Summit growing and growing and growing. IT Nation, if you've never been to one of these events before, Dan Scott and the whole team at ConnectWise, they're just doing incredible things from the community perspective. So they had like 5,000 plus registrations. They've announced that they're going to do an IT Nation in Europe. I believe it's next March. Coming to London. So don't quote me on the date, but there's definitely one coming. And of course, they're going to do their security conference again next year. And security was really unsurprisingly to everyone, security was the watchword, the real theme of the conference there. So many vendors, offering security solutions, talking about cybersecurity. Some really good events. ConnectWise do events very, very well.
Yeah, I miss it. I think the last one that I went to was like 2009. So it's been a while. It's been a while for me. We were a ConnectWise partner. All right. So actually in that vein, let's talk about cybersecurity. And we talked about marketing, and Pete went on about how bad MSP marketing sucks last week. So in virtual reality. So we couldn't see, we get to throw real tomatoes at you this week, Pete. So instead of your virtual self. So we kind of touched on it last week about maximizing client value and really generating more revenue from the people that are already writing us checks. So I figured we would kick off this week and just talk about kind of where you see that being an issue, and why don't more MSPs do that? Why don't they go back to the till, if you will, and get more revenue out of their current clients?
I think it's a very valid question. I certainly from this is like a story from way back in my day. Even though, my dad's day actually, he became this like superstar salesman with I think he sold photocopiers originally, and then he went into selling lease lines in like connectivity into schools. And the reason why he like smashed all the sales targets and became like the most successful salesperson at the company was because he was the first and only person that just decided to focus on the existing client base rather than just constantly trying to go out there and get new business and new sales and new marketing and all this kind of thing. Actually, there's a huge amount of value placed in looking at the existing client base. And this actually comes off the back of a chat we had in the recent Tech Tribe meetup of just having this like products and services matrix, where if you list out all of the products and services you sell and list out all your clients, and then just have a checkbox for each service that client's taken up. And then you can start seeing, which clients have got, maybe gaps in their product set that you could be offering. And B, there might even be some similarities. If you then notice that, say, all of the law firms, bar one or two, have XYZ software features or services or, things that you sell, but there's one or two that are missing them out, well, it's pretty certain that those two that are missing it are probably going to take up those remaining services because everybody else has got them. And it's a very, very, from a selling point of view, to be able to say, well, everyone else has done it. This is a massive gap for you. Why are you not doing it? It's quite an easier sell coming from someone that's not a good salesperson, but just wants to fix problems. So just having the matrix thing really, really helps to be able to identify problems or identify gaps in where you could be upselling certain products and services. And I also found that, and actually the original reason why we created the product matrix in my MSP was because we had, I think there's one day where I heard someone phone in and they're like, I'm calling in just to, the problem with our lease line, just calling in. It's like, okay. And I heard the person on the phone go, thank you for that. You should probably phone your lease line provider then. And I was like, they did. It's us. That's why they're phoning us. And I was like, oh God, this can't happen again. So we created this product matrix. This is the kind of thing that all the engineers, all the staff could look at and see instantly as soon as a client called in. And to get in a bit into the weeds in terms of like how to do it. If you're a ConnectWise partner, very timely being ConnectWise IT Nation has just happened. If you're in ConnectWise and you have BrightGauge, super simple way to completely automate having a project matrix. You just have your contract set up in ConnectWise, and you can do this in any PSA. To be fair, have your contracts set up so that the contracts are identifiable to the products or services that you sell. And then with Brightgate's reporting tool, all it did was look to see if contracts existed for clients, then put a tick in that box. And then you do the same thing if lease line or internet contract exists for client, tick that box. And so as long as you keep your PSA system and ConnectWise up to date with the contracts, then that matrix is completely automatically always up to date as well. And you can have a live dashboard, you can see exactly what's happening where, and it just makes that whole job so easy. Because I know just even talking about having a product matrix or a service matrix or a client matrix is just like that's just another thing I need to outsource or delegate or stay on top of. So if you can actually get this so it's permanently updated automatically, through the Brightgate systems, it's the kind of thing you do once and you forget about, and it's always there. So yeah, just that's pretty my, I think, takeaway, and maybe a bit of practical reality of how you can actually set it up as well.
How often did you go back and talk to clients and kind of go through that matrix?
So in terms of the matrix, we didn't. I guess it would fall into like the quarterly reviews that we would used to have. So again, I don't know why I'm going to the technicalities, but within ConnectWise, because I've been writing emails to ConnectWise, so I'm in ConnectWise mode at the moment. Just have like a ticket that generates every 3 months, reminds you to book a meeting with the client, so you can have those quarterly catch-ups and meetings with them. And at that stage, you can, yes, you've got the chance to point out the gaps, but also there are new products, new services. Microsoft might have just rolled out their 35th application that's been secretly hidden into the Microsoft 365 that they could benefit from. So it's just using those opportunities that the FaceTime with the clients to just really let them know what they've already got and what they're already paying for, and how they can maximize the efficiencies and maximize their use out of it. But yeah, as always, and I think I might have said this in a previous podcast or video, where with the marketing we were doing, the whole point of the marketing was that I wanted to propagate the same message, whether it's going to be like, oh, hey, Microsoft Teams has come out when that came out, or the latest features have come out. Make sure you're using them. That would be through the video, through the podcast, through blog posts, through emails. We kind of push that out through everything. Yeah. My goal was that I would get to those quarterly meetings, or our account managers would get to those quarterly meetings, and they wouldn't have to explain it to them, because they've already had those, had whichever medium they kind of absorbed it in, they'd already had that information. But still, we'd still get to those meetings. We'd tell them all these things, and they'd be like, oh, Pete, I wish you told me about that sooner, because I could have done X, Y, Z with it. And it's so frustrating, because you just sat there going, we did. We sent you emails. We sent you printed newsletters that you opened. Hopefully, well, potentially not opened. We did videos. We did podcasts. We've literally done all we can do, apart from, of course, picking up the phone and telling them, each time it happens. But it's not possible to do that for every single client. You can't pick up the phone every single time something new happens and tell them all individually. That's why you kind of wait until you have these, scheduled or quarterly catch-ups with them, so you can. But again, my goal was to educate them before we got to that stage, so they could have already investigated it and see if it was good for their business. Maybe they could have already bought it. We could have already installed it, and we wouldn't have to have that discussion. It saves time. But yeah, it still happens, and I don't think there's any fix for that at all. It's really just clients are busy. You have to understand clients are busy. So as long as you get to the stage and they're receptive to your suggestions, your recommendations, then ultimately that's what we're here for, is to work on behalf of the clients and do a good job for them, really.
How about you, Scott? How often do you do that now?
Oh, we are terrible at it. We're really bad at it, genuinely, and I'm happy to admit that. So the correct answer, of course, is that you should be doing your quarterly business reviews. And if they're not, I think I saw someone get sued once because they didn't stick to the quarterly cadence, and so they started to call them technology business reviews, and so at least they weren't mandated as quarterly. So maybe TBRs. But it's the right answer, right? It's actually, as Pete says, picking up the phone and speaking to them, or getting in a room with them and having a conversation with your client, because it's not just about your performance and the tickets that you've closed and the incidents that have been raised and how many viruses you've protected them from this month, and all that stuff's useful and helpful, of course, to show that you're maintaining the service, because we get it. It's if everything's working well, then it kind of almost, the client feels like, well, why do I need to pay you guys? Nothing happens. You're like, no, you're not seeing all the stuff we're doing in the background to make sure that nothing happens to you. But it's those opportunities where they then tell you, hey, we're growing, we're opening a new office, or we're shrinking, we're actually closing down an office. And those are all your opportunities to say, hey, we can help in this way, or we could do a mini project here to help expand this area, or automate some things, or help you draw back some costs. That's where that true sort of partnership of being, because we always say we want to be the IT team in the company. We want to be their IT partner. We want to be their virtual CIO. But for a lot of MSPs, once the client's, gone through the sales process and signed up and they're on that recurring, IT service plan, the only contact that they have is with the service desk. And occasionally when things don't go well on the service desk, they'll escalate maybe to their account manager or a service delivery manager. And that is true for a lot of MSPs. I know we often get the good bunch on this show and in our communities, but in the wider community, the experience of clients is that they're not really getting spoken to as often. And I can honestly say, we're guilty of that as well. We'll let those quarterly business reviews slip. We'll let that cadence slip because we're so busy trying to do other things. And as Pete says, I think, trying to market and video and attract new clients and taking our eye off current clients. And that's not fair either. When they then phone up, you're like, oh my goodness, I feel terrible. We haven't had a conversation in ages. And then you have a really good catch up and you see so many ways that you could help them right now. But also you have that gut wrenching feeling when they tell you about a pain that they've had for 6 or 8 weeks and you could have helped. Like you've got the answer right there. And if you'd have just spoken to each other, if you'd have just kept up with those reviews, it's a pain they didn't have to go through. And I think we titled the show like Customer Lifetime Value. And when I thought about that, it was all about relationship. It's all about how do we genuinely stay in touch with our customers really well at the time that they need us. I think back to Pete's point, we can put out newsletters and flyers and videos, but we might just catch them at the wrong time because they're super busy. And that's why I think getting that person-to-person communication is super duper important. And every time I think about it, I realize I feel guilty about not doing it enough. And that's where, I've got to look at that. And, I'm on my mission to make myself useless. If that's a role that needs to happen, if that's a seat that needs filling, then I need to find someone to sit in that seat because it's super duper important to us and our clients.
Yeah, Richard, I know you've got some experience there too.
You're really bad at doing it. The thing that I'll be honest, we did it as well as we could do, but the challenge we had is some clients just didn't want to; they were too busy, or maybe they didn't see the value of it. That was quite a hard sell. But the way we started to get into the cadence was we just had that automation set up within the ticketing system. So yeah, every 3 months or however long you define, it would just create a ticket, just like any other ticket. And, if the engineers pick it up or the account managers pick it up or whoever picks it up, but at least it's a ticket in the system that needs to be followed up, just like any other ticket. So maybe that might help anyone else who's struggling in similar ways of just, if it's a problem, if it's something that needs to be done regularly, just throw it into another ticket. We all know how to deal with tickets, and one extra ticket is going to create a huge amount of work, hopefully.
Practical solution to that. So I'm old school. We used to do 3 different things for this. So Scott, something that we scheduled, to Pete's point, we had a recurring ticket within ConnectWise. We were a ConnectWise PSA. Other PSAs are available in his best BBC voice. But what it did, Scott, we actually prompted me as the business owner to not wait for the next QBR, but to pick up the phone once a week to a different client and just say, hey, Richard here, just checking, just phoning you as one business owner to another. How's it going? And just checking in there. It's a little bit like, they say about annual reviews for members of staff. Like a year's way too long. And I actually think a quarterly review is too long. So you can check in with them regularly. So that's the first thing we did. The second thing we did was actually, to Pete's point again, we're old school. So we used to have a piece of paper, a big piece of card above the wall with the graph on, with the matrix on, with all the solutions, all the services that we had. And then we ticked it off in green. We had red crosses where people didn't have the service. And we created themes every month. So the theme for the month might have been, back in the day for us, it would be offsite backup. And we would make a point of going to all of our clients who hadn't got offsite backup and speaking to them about the benefits of offsite backup. What that did for us was we were focused on it and we were having timely conversations with people. Now, you still come across some of the same issues that Pete mentioned. Sometimes it goes in one ear and out another. Clients concentrate on what is important to clients at that time. So that's the second thing that we did. And the third thing that we did from a practical perspective was, and this is obviously pre-COVID, although things are changing again now, we did what we called engineering floor walks, which many people have heard me speak about this quite often. It's, one of my favorite super tips for managed service providers. But we sent engineers out to client sites all the time with no other reason, or we'd give them a silly reason to go out there. The engineer knew, go and check the UPS or go and label this computer or whatever it might be. But the engineer would come to site, usually carrying a box of donuts or some cakes or something, because no client in history has ever turned away an IT guy turning up at the door with sweet things. So they did that. And then they would walk around the office and tap people on the shoulder and go, how you doing? Is there anything I can help with while I'm here? And so for those MSPs who are watching this, when you get really good at doing managed services, there's very little reason for you to go to your client site anymore, because we've got these wonderful, remote management tools. But then what happens after a while is you get so good at doing it that the client forgets all of the pain that they had before they started working with you. And so they give you that horrible, most dreaded question that MSPs get, which is, what is it we're paying you for? So engineering floor walks often sort of alleviated that to a degree, just to give visibility. Hey, we're here. We can help you with things. But the upsell opportunity, and I don't really like the word upsell. We got to find a better word than that. The maximizing, the client's value, whatever you want to call it, was when the engineers said to members of staff, hey, how's it going? Can I help with anything? And there was often like, a printer's not working or this, that, or the other. But they'd often say, hey, we're taking on new members of staff next week. And oh, right, we better get computers ready for that. So that alleviated some of those issues where you get a phone call on a Monday morning. We've got a new member of staff joining. We need a computer. When are they joining? They're here now. We've all had that right. It's an absolute pain. But interestingly, they would often, members of staff would say, actually, we're thinking about this project and we might need a new server or might need a new printer or whatever it might be. So my engineers often came back from client sites to go out and to be helpful, to uncover festering issues, but they would come back with project work, with upselling solutions, and it was absolutely great. And I said earlier on, I'll close by saying this, the top question that you dread getting from clients is, what is it we're paying you for? So going and actually staying in touch with clients and seeing them face to face can alleviate some of that. The second question for me, or the worst question you can get from a client, is they phone you up and they say, hey, we've got an engineer here fitting a new VoIP system and he wants to know the administrator password. And you say to them, well, we could have done that for you. And they say to you, we didn't realize you did that.
Yep.
And it is so frustrating. So again, going back to what Pete said about staying in touch with them, letting them know the services you put out there. For me, that's super important because you don't want either of those two questions to come up.
Yeah, for sure. Or the printer guy. Somebody comes in with a new copier. It was always the copier guy. They hated us, we hated them, and I'm like,
dang, wasn't it? Oh.
Yeah, it's funny because it's like that's something you don't think about. But we had law firms, so not everybody had a copier, but a law firm does, and that was and that was one of the things I didn't sell copiers. So yeah, so how do you eliminate that? So Westway IT, I'm trying to see so you guys can see the comments too. Did you show them the matrix or what they had and didn't have visually, or did you just discuss it?
So for me, it's always just discuss it. The matrix is for your internal staff to see and know, because if you're showing them the matrix, then my matrix it basically looks like an Excel spreadsheet, but looks a bit prettier, which would be a list of clients down the left-hand side column and a list of the services across the top. So if you show them the list, you'll be showing them all your clients. So that's a no-no. But yeah, just show them to your internal staff so they can quickly identify what's going on, and your sales team can see what's going on. But in terms of the clients, you basically just say, hey, look, all of our other solicitors or other law firms have got these two products that you don't. So therefore, when do yours expire? Let us know. We'll get them rolled out, or find out why they don't think they need it. There was an interesting format that the last company I worked at before I started my own business, they did this, I guess, strategic IT review, or whatever you might call it, where they go out and assess a new business, and they would basically give them a 20 or 30 page report back, which would identify where they currently are in terms of their IT needs, and where the IT needs to be able to meet their 2, 3, 5 year plan. And the way they worded it within there was, they did like a traffic light system of how your servers, how your networking, your wireless, your security. They traffic lighted it based on how you compare and how you rate compared to other similar sized businesses in your niche. So basically, they were comparing them to their competitors. And so when you're identifying and saying, well, hey, you're really, really weak on these areas compared to the guy down the road that's running the same business, it really helps them focus and actually pay attention to go, oh, actually, no, if they're doing that, then we should be doing that as well. But yeah, I wouldn't trade in the matrix. Just use that information so you can actually action it and do something with it.
Yeah, Richard, you had a point that you wanted to make too on that.
Yeah, what Pete was saying about not showing customers the matrix, I absolutely agree with that, because it can get overwhelming, can't it? For customers, it's like you've got all these red crosses rather than green ticks. The flip side of that, though, and this is a tip, and I'll give full credit here to my good friend Andy Parks, who runs iBit Solutions, an MSP based out of Coventry, long time, and Andy's very well known in the community, a real go-giver. But Andy started on his invoices. First of all, he listed everything that they did for a client on the invoices. And I'm not talking about time and tick and things like that. I'm talking about, they did the backups and the defragging and, all of that jazz on there. Wonderful. But what Andy also did was listed some of the services that the client didn't take. Now, this is a really interesting one from human psychology perspective, because we all know, we've seen those sales forms, haven't we? We come through, you buy stuff from Apple and they say, oh, do you want warranty care? Oh, do you want the new case? Do you want an Apple Watch to go with that? Do you want like engraving? And you go, oh, yeah. So there is something you can do there. Like Andy was sending those invoices out, and it was almost like that Chinese menu of saying, look, here are the services you get, and here are the services you don't get. And then next to it, Andy used to put something to the equivalent of email, backup at ibitsolutions.com if you want to add this service to your portfolio. So I think that's really interesting, because it plays on human psychology, doesn't it, for people wanting what they haven't got at the moment.
Yeah.
See, my mind with my automation, I'm just trying to think, how could you even automate that to be able to kind of automatically show the products they haven't got and show it as declined, or get in touch, or because I know with the telephony billing system and many of them that are around, you can like input ads. So you can have an ad that shows on the billing, the invoice, that advertises the other services you do. Which is something we did do just to make sure, hey, we also do, the same thing, telecoms, printing, VoIP, internet connectivity, those kind of things. But we still had exactly those same scenarios of, I've just got our phone system ordered. Can you come and help install the whatever it is? Or they need some extra room. And that was always the frustrating one. They need some extra room in the rack to fit their switches. It's like, yeah, but your switches are also compatible, and we could just VLAN them off, and it'd be less like hassle, less maintenance. Oh, there's also an extra internet connection that's been installed for our phone system. Your internet connection's fine. You could have just used the one you had already and saved money. But yeah, I digress.
Yeah.
So I'd be very interested to know if and how he does that. It sounds like a manual thing, which if it's manual, then it's a manual thing. And I guess maybe you set it up once for each client and it's done. Yeah, I'd love to know if there's a way of automating that somehow. That's just my wanting to do as little work as possible hat on.
So I think, too, that kind of goes back to Scott's initial point, because I think you're not alone, Scott, in the fact that a lot of MSPs know they should do the technology business reviews. And yeah, we have the tools to automate and remind us. But I still think that there's something there. I wanted to brainstorm this because I still think it's an issue where if they go in and ask, okay, do you want this service? And somebody says no, then they never offer it again. So I think that turns into kind of what Richard said too, the sales thing, an upsell. We MSPs get weirded out by the word sales, anything that has to do with sales. Yeah. So I think that may be into the mentality, but where do you guys see the disconnect, and how do we bridge that disconnect that MSPs have between knowing that they should do it and actually getting it done?
I think
I
there's
think
a couple of
Oh, go
different
on.
things there. Oh, sorry. It depends if they've gone to buy it from someone else. Because again, it's very similar to what you've just said there. I've seen a lot of people where they lose the sale, so to speak, to a third party. The third party comes in and they're like, we've lost it, it's gone, and that's all they do about it. But actually, find out, is it a 1 year term? Is it a 3 year term? Put that into your system, and then you can check in with the client along the way. Check in after a year or even 6 months and just say, hey, how is the phone system working out for you? How are you getting on with it? And then if you know when the contract's going to expire, it might be 3 years time, but as we know, clients generally stick around for a very long time. Put that into your system. So just like any other server warranty renewal or anything, you get a notification come up 3 months before they're due to renew with that supplier, and you get the opportunity once again to come in and hopefully win the business back again. If you and you'll hopefully have learned something from the last time you quoted it, and you can kind of learn from those mistakes if it was a mistake at all. That's kind of the one side. I guess the other side, the more challenging side, is what if they just say no because they can't afford it or don't want it or don't think they need it? So that's the challenging situation, and is that where Scott wanted to hop in?
No, I was going to say what I find with quite a few people and in my own experience is that they'll decide for the client without asking the client. Yeah. I'm not going to bother asking because I know they're going to say no.
Assumption.
Yeah.
And that is huge. There's so many opportunities that I've seen with working with other MSPs and with other sales professionals in the MSP space where they just go, oh no, I'm not going to ask them because they'll say no, and so we never ask. And I just think that's such a huge issue where we've decided, well, they won't pay for backup, they won't make room for it. They're really cheap. They don't like to spend on things, so they're not going to buy some new laptops. You don't know. You don't know. And again, because we're not talking to them regularly enough, we've just assumed that they're not going to spend. And again, it's that court case that happened in Europe. I forget all the details, but I'm sure you've seen it, where an MSP wasn't backing someone up. They weren't backing up their client. The client had a cyber breach. Data was lost. Money was lost. And in the end, the client takes the MSP to court and says, I believe this was your responsibility. And the MSP had said time and time again, we offered you backup. We asked if you wanted backup. You said no, or you just ignored our emails. You never took us up on this offer. And the court ruled in the favor of the client to say, you have to pay damages to the client. You were not explicit enough to the client about the risks that they faced by not taking this backup service, and that something like this could happen to them. And I look at that and go, well, I'm horrified by that situation. But also it makes me think like we really need to be, a bit more bullish with our clients. When I see people engaging with, solicitors, or you're buying a house and you're doing some conveyancing, or you're working with a professional accountancy firm, when they tell you these are the list of things that you need to do and these are the requirements, that like very rarely do you go, well, could you do it for 10 quid cheaper? Or I'll do those bits myself, don't worry about them, and you just do these bits. But we seem to let ourselves get pushed around in those areas when it comes to MSP. And I know we're not regulated, and I kind of wish that we were, and held to a minimum standard. In fact, I think that'd be great. I'd love to see us get there. But we tend to sort of really, really get pushed back quite easily by clients. And I've been having this conversation with a couple of MSPs and some really interesting chats with good friends are saying, when you're offering your MSP services now to clients, are you going out with a good, better, best? And is good really the bare minimum that you're prepared to support on a long-term basis? Somebody wave. Come on. Yay. Is good, not you guys, that won't make the lights come on. It is good really the bare minimum that you're prepared to support and maintain that customer on a 1, 2, or 3 year contract? Is that really your minimum standard? Or actually, are you just giving the cheapest possible option? And in other cases, they're going out and saying, no, we have one package for managed IT services. It includes all the security that you need. Take it, or don't work with us. We don't mind, because this is how we work with clients and this is the security stack that we have. And so that matrix idea that we've been talking about probably still comes into account in some regards in the other products like voice or leased lines, but their managed IT stack is fixed. These are the products, these are the services that you get. Here's the price per user. And so, I just think that's a very bullish approach that is working for some MSPs. Good, better, best can definitely work. But in a lot of MSPs, good isn't good. It's not good enough. It's not secure enough. It doesn't have the minimum amount of products in. And they framed it so that actually the middle package is the one they really want to sell, but they'll let themselves get pushed down to good. And I think, I just think we need to be more bullish, or maybe we do need to have a my way or the highway type approach. It is working for some MSPs, not everyone. I think it has to be a really good solution. It has to be a really good price point. But I don't know. I think there's room for debate.
You touched on something very briefly there that I've seen in multiple MSPs, and all of them have had pretty much the same experience, but they've done it in a different way. But in terms of like maximizing client value, just increasing prices. The question you raised of, they're not going to pay that. That comes up so much with looking at price increases. And certainly when you're looking at like doing new packaging and new pricing and putting together this security stack, most people are they're putting together the security stack whilst they've got this little thought in the back of their head of, my existing clients aren't going to pay that. They're not going to sign up to that. It's too expensive for them. So it really holds them back. But I keep saying to them, just forget about what your existing clients will or maybe or not sure might pay. Focus on the new clients that you want to be taking on board, and focus, build the pricing for those clients. And then the old clients or the existing clients, you can figure out a way of transitioning, or maybe you let some of them go again if they don't come up to the new standards. But one of my clients just turned around, I think it was like a month or two ago, and he just increased the price on all of his contracts. He bumped it up by like $20 per user per month, or $20 an hour or something. And literally not one single complaint, not a phone call, not an email. Business just carried on as normal. The invoices carried on getting paid. And I think he did actually pick up the phone and speak to one client because he was just talking about a few other things. And they just said, look, the pricing and inflation has gone up by like so much on all of our other costs. Like, it was only a matter of time before yours was going to go up. And I understand you've got all your costs going up. So yeah, and we want to support you as a client and a business as well. So why not ask you this example? They were like, why not just bump it up by another $5 or $10? Because we want to make sure that you're not just scraping by. We need you to stay in business and make a profit. So just having that attitude exactly holding you back of, they're not going to pay that. Like, don't do that. Like from a pricing sensitivity point of view, yes, inflation is a thing. Everyone's dealing with it. Everyone's paying more money anyway. If anything, and it sounds horrible, but like now's probably the time to do the price increase, because everyone's so numb from having it from all angles and going down to their bread and butter they're buying in the supermarket, that actually now is probably the best time to come at them with a price increase, because they're just going to be we're all dealing with it. We're all having to deal with those costs, and we just kind of take it on the chin and go, oh well, it's another price increase. Yeah, we'll suck it up because that's just the world we live in nowadays. But yeah,
just got one this morning. My homeowner's policy. I've been here a year. It went up. I'm like, nothing changed. Same house. So I get it. So Richard, I know you have a lot of advice for MSPs around sales and that whole stigma that we have about selling. What would your advice be to an MSP there?
I've been reflecting, thinking about it just while we've been having the conversation. So, Pete was talking about, and I'm a big fan of this, automation. And Scott was saying he knows he should. By the way, you speak to any therapist, Scott, and they will tell you the word should. You need to eliminate it from your diary. It just beats you up. Doesn't do anything good. But what, the conclusion I'm coming to is that we need to reduce the friction for MSPs between actually what we should do, the sales, and actually going in and doing it. So there's ways we can automate that. There's tools we can use. When I was running my MSP back in the day, I had to go through sales training, and we put charts up, and we had recurring tickets, all of these different things and that, and yet sales was still a bit icky. It still felt a little bit uncomfortable, as though we're trying to persuade somebody to buy something that they don't really need. So you've got to shift your mentality first of all. Sales is, you are doing your client a disservice if you don't let them know about the products and solutions that will make their life easier. It's their choice at the end of the day whether they want to pay for it, but you are doing them a disservice. So that's the first thing I reflected on, was the mental change we need to make. And secondly, when it comes to reducing the friction of doing it, so I'll give a massive shout out here to the guys at Zementum, their revenue platform, because one of the things that I've noticed Zementum does really well for MSPs is when they're putting together a quote or a proposal, it actually says, oh, why don't you include this, or why don't you include that, or why don't you include the other? And it's prompting them to actually say to their clients, do you know we did this as well? It's almost that upsell thing that we were talking about earlier on. And so I actually think that's going to be huge for the industry once packages like Zementum get adopted more easily, because it takes the MSP through a defined sales process, best practices, for want of a better word. And secondly, then forces them to say, okay, should I be offering the client this, that, or the other? Of course I should. So, and then it's a one-click thing to include those in the quote as well. So reduce the friction to getting stuff done. Automation tools and mindset are the three areas to reduce friction, I would say.
Yeah, and I think
if I can tag on to Zomentum for a second as well, because we just started using it maybe 8 weeks ago, and then you send out your quotes, and again, another area where I can't use the word should, another area where we something improve. I can't wait to use the word should, but anyway, we send out quotes to clients all the time, and it's hit or miss. Some people want to work with us, some people don't. Some people don't get back to us. And I had a quote out through Zementum, and then I just got a ping back from the client saying, "Oh, I'm really sorry to hold you up on this. Where I'm just getting it signed off by the FD. We really want to go ahead, but yeah, thanks for your patience, buddy." But I was like, "That's weird." And then another week later, I still hadn't heard anything. And he's like, "Oh yeah, thanks for checking in. We are definitely, we do want to go ahead. Thanks for your patience, but we're going ahead." And I didn't realize Zementum sending reminders to them that their quote is valid for 30 days, and they've had it for 7, and they've only got 21 left. And then they've had it for 14, and they've only got 4. And I didn't know. So it's reminding them. And then they're coming back to me going, "I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to hold you up." And I'm like, I'm so bad at follow-ups. We send the quote, go, well, they either want to work with us or they don't, right? So I'm sure they'll come back to us. We're that good. We don't follow up. Zementum follows up, and it does it automatically and transparently. And so we're just getting the feedback in, going, yeah, we're going to be signing that off next week. Really, really great tool. The other thing is, as well as part of my mission to be useless, I'm going to write a book, is that it now means that I'm serious. I want to write that book. If anyone can help me, I want to write that book. It now means that I don't do the quotes in our finance system anymore. So any professional services quotes or any sales quotes with a full proposal, I don't have to do those. Right, but I've built all the templates in Zementum. My guys can go in and go, this customer, this is the opportunity. I want to use this template and go. And it pre-populates everything. We have fixed packages of work that go in there. It's all ready to go. And I don't have to do that anymore. It's really cool.
Yeah. And I think too, around that issue of selling is I changed the mindset. When somebody's already writing me a check, I don't need to sell them anything. And I changed my mindset when I was going in and talking about services, and I started to make, and I think that for me is I was the same way. I got hung up on the QBR. I got hung up that this has to be a big formal process where we all sit around a table and I try to sell you something and you either say yes or no. I started getting very informal. I'm just like, yeah, kind of what, who was it says they bring donuts? Was that you, Pete, or was that you, Richard? Yeah,
but as a rule of thumb, Andrew, if there's any talk about cake, it's me.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, hey, next Friday, I'm going to bring in pizza for the staff. While I'm there, we'll just sit and chat about things. So it's the same for the client. It's if you make it a big formal process that's going to take an hour and a half, they may or may not have time for it. So when I started doing that, our client that I started at $60 a seat way back in 2004, when I changed that and, probably about 2007, 2008, my formal process was very informal. I would just bring lunch or I would take them to lunch. And I remember when I started getting into hardware as a service through Tartech. And I remember this was going to be a big bump for us to get them to agree to basically double their managed service contract. So I took her to lunch, told her what we had, what we were looking at doing. They would never have to write a check for hardware, never have to worry about updating computers or doing, that was my quote unquote sell. And she's like, oh, okay, well, just send me the paperwork. I don't care what it costs. Just send me the paperwork. And that doubled my MSP contract. And by the time we were done with that 10 years later, we still had that client. They were $563 a seat, all in. We had everything. We owned everything on the network. We owned, we hosted their website, did unlimited hosting support. It was just a ton of different things, but we went above and beyond what anybody else would do. And when you have that relationship, you're not really selling anything. As you guys have said, you're giving them something that they already need. You're just figuring out a way to provide that as a service for them. So,
and the more service and solutions they take from you as well, the more, in old school terms, we would call it the client is sticky. Because think about this, when the client's looking to cut costs, they go through all the invoices. They're going to look at your invoice and it's like all these different services. We'll put that one to one side and come back to it, and we'll look at other suppliers first. Look at costs. It's just the way it works. People go for the easiest route.
Yeah,
Richard, I laughed for a second when Andrew said it was 2004 and he was charging $60 a seat. I'm like, it's 2022 and there's so many UK MSPs who can't even get to $60 a seat.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have the security risks that we do now. I mean, this is insane. Yeah. I mean, where it changed from 2004 to when I sold in 2014. Like, we didn't have cell phones. Like, I didn't get tickets 24/7. I mean, we weren't walking around with iPhones in 2004. So, yeah, it's crazy. Richard, you said you have some resources. Well, see if we can do a screen share. We'll see if we can get this to work.
I noticed in the chat because we were talking about Zementum and what they do. So I've done a number of different interviews with the guys at Zementum. Let me see if I can share the screen. So hopefully you can see that there. This is one that I did with Ben Spector from Zementum. Now Ben's a former MSP. Himself. So Ben ended up working at Zementum because he went through all of the pain as an MSP of struggling with the sales. So, this episode, How to Accelerate Your MSP Sales for Business Growth, I think this is one of our, highest rated episodes because Ben delivers so much interesting, bits and pieces about how you can actually reduce the friction in the sales cycle, really. So that's definitely one that I would check out. And, go and check out the Zementum website. They've got a ton of different resources there. But, this is the bit I wanted to draw attention to. Pete has been talking about, how can I automate this? It's fundamental. If you speak to any expert, they're going to tell you, look to automate things as much as possible, because when it's on automate, you don't have to put your brain into gear, and you don't get the little voice that says, "Oh, they're not going to want this, they're not going to afford it." All those assumptions. Take the human out of the sales process to a degree, and just put the automation through. And I think that will make a big difference.
Yeah, there we go. If you want to show that resource one more time.
Yeah, let me go again.
Pop that. Scott, and perhaps Richard, a quick question in terms of because this is the thing I had with. The problem with automation, certainly on like automated chasers, is knowing, say you've had a phone call to say like, yep, okay, you've got an update, yeah, you're going to speak to them tomorrow, okay. But then they get the next follow-up email that says like, hey, you still haven't heard back from you, so you're still waiting to hear back from you. Does Zementum, how does Zementum deal with that? Or does it deal with that?
Well, so on the Zementum side of things, all it's doing is letting them know that their quote's expiring. So it's not really chasing them up to say, hey, it's not customized anyway to say, hey, you should be signing this off, or hey, just want to check in. It's just letting them know that the quote expires in 30 days and then in 21 days and 14 days. And so it's just it's a subtle reminder that they've had this quote, for the service. It's going to expire shortly, and it's system generated. So it just feels like just a little nudge. And so if you've had a conversation, it's not painful for someone to get that little tickle reminder. But if they've just put it to the back of their mind, it's a helpful little, hey, oh, yeah. I got really busy and we did have a quote for that and I am interested. So it's just a really nice, subtle reminder. But we've started to set up some other automations in there now because it's got the built-in e-signatures. So a client can, when they get the quote, you can give them the mandatory items, you can give them optional items that they can tick and add on to. I then have a couple of automations. One is like as they hit sign and the deal goes to 1 inside Zementum, we take that project and that goes into our PSA system. I then also take that value and I create a draft quote inside our finance system inside Xero. Because every week I'll go through and I'll check in Xero and go, hey, are we billing these projects yet? Is this okay? I'll check in with Halo, but Xero is really my kind of go-to dashboard for really knowing, have we sent these invoices out? Halo's nice, Zementum's nice, but this is real money here over in Xero. So I always like to have it ready in there. So I have a couple of those things just set on client signature. Once they digitally sign it, it shoots off those 2 automations for me. Some of that's Zementum, some of that is actually Zapier, just working in combination with those things.
Yeah, we get nerded out on the tools. We can go all day long about the tools.
Well, the point is it reduces the friction, the human element, Scott. So I was thinking while you were talking, how many times, and this goes for relationships as well, if anybody has done dating, online dating or anything, it's like, when should I follow up with them? Should I drop them a line? And it's exactly the same in sales, isn't it? Because we send the quotes, they acknowledge receipt of the quote, and then it goes quiet. And we're like, shall I be a nuisance? Shall I check in on them? Just get rid of that. If you've got the automated stuff there, even if they take offense of it, which nobody, to Scott's point, I don't think anybody has ever taken offense at an automated message coming through of that nature. But even if they do, you can say, oh, yeah, it was the automation that did it. And but it just removes that human ability to think and procrastinate about it. Just get the human out of the way.
Yeah, and I think, if you're questioning whether or not this strategy of maximizing client value can work, if you guys know Robert Gibbons,
Of course, yeah.
he messaged me a couple weeks ago. He wants me to do a course on it, just how to do that, the nuts and bolts of it. He's increased their revenue 65% this year, strictly off of maximizing the client value, the people that are already writing him checks. And think about that for a second. He's not chasing new clients. Yes, they do have sales and marketing in place, but he's not constantly on the hunt for new. He's taking care of the customers he already has and maximizing that revenue. I mean, that's huge. A 65% increase in revenue without adding a single customer. And they've been tracking that since the beginning of the year. And I think, so when we think about it, can it be done? I'm not sure whether I can do that. It by all means could work for sure. I know we're coming up on the top of the hour. John had one more question that I thought we could get to if I move this up so people can see it. He said, question on the tribe, what extras that increase service value, what are your thoughts of little extras that can have a big impact on the relationship or perceived value of the service you offer? I figured we just end with that. Any tips there?
I think broadly speaking, I would say that and this goes for, Pete was talking about price increases earlier. So when you're increasing prices, if you're very nervous about that, and you really shouldn't be because everybody expects it, but make sure to add more value to what you're delivering. And you can say, we all get the messages, don't we? Virgin Media and Vodafone, whoever, Verizon, they get in touch with us and say, hey, we're putting the prices up this year, but hey, you've got this new service added or this new TV station or whatever it might be. You probably are not bothered about it. And so the point here is you want to be looking for services and solutions that are a really light lift from your perspective. So they don't take a lot of labor. They don't, perhaps not even a lot of cost, but the client sees some degree of value in it. So I'm trying to think of examples of services. Scott, what do you bundle with your services that you give to clients at the moment?
I mean, so generally we'll bundle in. I mean, simple things like backup is really easy. So every time we get backup as a service for Office 365 type things, it's fully automated. It's connected. So as soon as they add an account or a SharePoint site or a team site, it's automatically added. So we have that value of just saying, look, data will never be lost here. Okay, and it's already just part and parcel of the package. One of the other really nice things that we have is around the end user cybersecurity training. So again, we just add that in, and it's just that nice stuff of, again, it's fully managed from us. We outsource the whole thing for like call it $3 a user, right? But they will do phishing campaigns. They'll do tactical campaigns around training. They'll make sure that people are up to date on their training plans. It is localized, so we have really nice UK content. There's really nice North American content as well, but they manage the whole thing. So if someone did fall for one of the phishing scams, they'll be getting in touch with that person to make sure. And it's manually intervened. It's not all automated. Here's the thing that happened. Here's the training, video that you need to watch, and then they'll check and see, did they do that? And again, there's so much value in there we don't do anything. Let's be really clear. As the MSP, we don't do anything. It's $3, so it's a very low cost, and we can afford to make sure that our service bundle is increased in price and incorporate that in it. It's really nice.
Yeah,
that's brilliant. Who do you use, Scott?
One of the things that we did, I added an executive concierge service. Big fancy name for it. But the things that we included in there, I started listening to pain points that people had. And one of the big ones for CEOs, when these stupid things came out, cell phones, they don't want to go wait in line at the AT&T store or the cell phone store to get the new iPhone.
Right.
I bundled that in. Our executive concierge service included us doing that for them and up to 3 top-level executives inside the company and or their staff. Like especially like the admin of a CEO, it's very important that they continue to do their job. So we did special things, and I lumped it in as the executive concierge service. So we would do things like that. And I would use that as a for instance when you're trying to sell that. And okay, how many times a year are you actually going to do that? Once, maybe. Because they don't want to go to do that. And the other thing that we did was home service for those top 3 executives. Because it's the same thing. If CEO wants to work from home, but is frustrated because he can't. And again, this was way before work from home became normal. This was a decade ago. But we made sure that his home office was set up. They had everything they needed. The kids' printer was hooked up so they can print their homework. I mean, it was just the little things that we did. And I had one CEO take us up on this where she bought a new house. She's like, hey, I bought a new house. We're moving. Can you help me out with that? So we did everything. Cut over internet from old location to new location, made sure everything was set up in her house the day that she took control of the house, all the way down to the kids' PlayStation, the Wii, everything was set up down in the basement to her TV in her room. And when she came home that night, everything was done.
That's gold, because she's not going to move away from your service anytime soon, is she? So.
Exactly. That was the client that was $563 a seat. When you do things like that, where it's not how many times do people move? But when you can use that as a case study, and these are the things that are included in our executive concierge service. Doesn't cost me anything on a monthly basis, and I'll gladly go to the cell phone store for somebody once a year if they write me $563 a seat. I'll do it all day long. But it's, again, CEOs talk about that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's where it was gold, because she would go to these events and she would tell people, like, I couldn't have bought enough press or marketing from that one helping her move that day. Yeah. We picked up 5 new clients just because she was going around telling people out of nowhere.
That's amazing.
So, John, to answer your question, don't make it complicated. Think about things that your clients currently have a pain point around that you might be able to provide a service for. Just things you walk in and you see that there's nobody mowing the lawn out in front of their office. Go help them find somebody to solve that problem. Cleaning their office. Go network with cleaning companies so that when somebody has a problem with cleaning their office, hey, I got a guy. You become that resource. So it doesn't have to be
Right.
Things that cost money necessarily, but when you're looked to as that resource, that's where you maximize that value. They trust you that when I come in and make an offer, where do I sign? Just send me the paperwork. No questions asked. So, all right. I know we're past time for you guys. A couple of you guys got a jet. So any parting thoughts on going into 2023 that you would have for an MSP around maximizing client value, how to do it, or just any other parting thoughts?
one thing that springs to mind, and this is probably maybe a setup for the next show, the whole idea of managed services being about you want to maximize your profit but lower your cost of support. And so, going back to John's question there about the services that can give away, often you can look for services to add to your portfolio that are not going to cost you too much money, but are going to lower the amount of tickets that you have to deal with. So content filtering and, backup and, things of that nature, email archiving, stuff like that. So, for me, I think it's one of the fundamental tenets of managed services is you're always looking to lower your cost of support, to eliminate the number of tickets that are coming through. So we could do a whole show about that, but that would be my thought for 2023 going into it. How can you lower your cost of support? What services or solutions are out on the market that your clients don't have at the moment, that if they did, you'd get less tickets, you would spend less time servicing those clients, you would make more profit.
I like it. Pete, Scott, anybody going to take that one? He's good.
I'm gonna go quickly with put your prices up. Don't assume that your clients aren't going to buy those services that you're selling them, and do not, whatever you do, be late for your youngest child's parent evening.
Exactly. On that, we're going to wrap this show. Before we get in trouble for keeping Scott on and Pete on, we got to take care of the kiddos. So thanks for hanging out with us, guys. Thank you, John, especially for hanging out with us live, and we will see you next week.